You move like an elephant in a tutu. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to King of Fighters. It's time for part 1.2 of this incredibly long journey we have ahead of us. I do apologize, it's going to take us some time, but we do have a limited work schedule here, so bear with us, my dudes. Unless if one of you guys are willing to pay Serbia a full salary this year. That would be great. Then maybe we could just record all day long. Oh, yeah. But all right, my dudes. If for some reason you haven't already, please go and support Thorgi. Link to the OG video is at the very top of the description, like always. Oh, God. That was pretty loud.
That was loud.
Victims are... Oh, Rugal. Yori! First time introduced into the series. I love that intro. It was so cheesy, but it's so perfect.
King of Fighters 95 came out in July, less than a year after the last game was released, and I'd like to reiterate, SNK was pumping out games at this time, pushing them to come out faster and harder, not stopping for any reason, no matter how much they might have wanted to.
Damn.
Don't get me wrong, when I listen to the developers talk about the games today, they say it was a fun time working on them. But remember that interview with the two game directors, Tanabe and Kuwasashi, in All About Magazine? At the end of it, they asked the two directors, since KOF 94 was received so well, can we expect KOF 95 next year? To which they replied, that's what we were afraid you'd ask. Right now, we're considering it. It all depends on the player response.
Okay, now here's the thing, right? In hindsight, those days were fun. In actual time, present day working on that was most certainly a crunch. Sleeping at the office, trying to get as much work done as possible. Because the players demand it, and we need to meet that in order to keep up with the competition. Yeah, yeah, that must have been rough. The early days of the company and all that.
At which point, the interviewer pushed them further on this and asked, if you were to start on a version for 95 now, it seems like it would be a really tight development schedule. To which the directors replied, that's why we really don't want to think about it.
Oh, no! Oh, God. I guess back then, they couldn't do something like what Silksong did and just, like, not announce any release schedule until they were absolutely certain that they could get the game done in a working state.
Honestly, it's things like this that have kind of been a pretty big detriment on games going forward into the future. Because when you have, like, older pixel games like this where you can repeat a lot of assets and reuse things, it's like... One that showcased this really a lot, I think, is Pokemon. Yeah. So it's like you can pump out a Pokemon game a lot faster when you're working through sprite sheets.
Yeah.
That switch to 3D really it fucked over Pokemon in a lot of ways.
Really like, hurt them, yeah.
X and Y came out and it did fantastic and it set a really good foundation for them, but they couldn't reuse any of that going into the next game. And even when you do make a game, like when you use a house or something, right? If you use the same 3D model of a house everywhere you go, it's going to look really
look
bad
horrible,
in 3D.
Yeah.
As opposed to like a sprite where you can reuse that house or change it just slightly really easily.
That makes sense.
So you're basically making assets from scratch. But Pokemon had that like 2-year release schedule pretty ironed out that they'd been doing for a long time. So that was the expectation that they would stick to, but they couldn't make the same quality caliber games in 3D in that schedule release.
Yeah.
And it just did not transition well from that point forward. And they've had a lot of issues with quality because of that. But that schedule that we got to get things out quickly really stuck with them from this earlier pixel development time.
It's strange, but I guess somewhat understandable, especially from the perspective of a consumer or gamer. who hasn't been in the development process before, it's like expecting a video from Maxor to be like every single week when no.
Yeah. I feel like, unfortunately, in consumers for video games and film, whatever the entertainment media is, there's kind of a lot of entitlement.
Yeah, a little bit.
It's really been a detriment to a lot of these industries, I fear. I say it, and a lot of people say it's like, I would rather people take their time and put out a good product. But then as soon as you see them take an extra year or something, there's so much people up in arms, be like, where's the new game or whatnot? And it's like, my guys, relax.
Yeah.
It is not going to kill you to wait an extra year for a better game. But it's so volatile. I don't know.
It's unfortunate that there's a pretty big chunk of the community that is going to be like that. Just people who are not familiar at all with the crunch time that people have to go through. And I guess the companies nowadays, too, kind of forcing people into that crunch time to beat the expectations of the consumers so that they can get more money, which is just a vicious cycle in and of itself.
Yeah, and it's been destroying a lot of companies for it. I'm really, and on the topic of Pokemon, I'm hoping that they'll learn their lessons and actually slow down a little bit.
Slow down. Make a really fantastic Pokemon game.
But I don't know. The last releases have been oof. And it sucks because there's so many good ideas, and I love Pokemon, and they do so much good, but just the release, the way that they've crunched themselves, and just all the corners that they cut, it's so not good. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's going to hurt their reputation more so in the long run than it'll benefit them in the short term.
Yeah, King of Fighters 95 came out in July, and this interview was done in December, just 7 months earlier, and they still hadn't started working on the game yet. And when you look at the final product, you can tell they didn't have a lot of time for development.
Yeah,
but
it looks pretty much the same.
No time for development.
Usually, if you hear that a game has a 7-month-long development cycle, it means the game is going to be glitchy and loaded with bugs. I mean, dear God, just saying the phrase 7-month development cycle gives me a headache. But King of Fighters 95 actually plays pretty well, and there's a reason for it. King of Fighters 95 is just King of Fighters 94, but with a patch. Yeah, as I said, gameplay-wise, King of Fighters 94 had some things going for it, but it also had its share of problems. I mean, they had to make the game with a record-breaking number of characters in roughly the span of a year. It's a miracle it worked at all. But in King of Fighters 95, they didn't really change much. The roster is almost completely the same, the sprites are pretty much direct ports, and each pre-existing character did get 1 or 2 new moves, but outside of that, it was basically the exact same game. Except everything now flowed together so much better. Don't get me wrong.
Okay, I'm actually not mad that, it's a new release, just ironed out a little bit, considering how short the development time is. So hopefully this will give us a leeway for the next one. Or maybe they'll get an idea that maybe we should delay it for a little bit longer so we can actually improve upon it.
This still feels like an early 90s fighting game, but compared to King of Fighters 94, the moves feel more natural. They can link together better. You can cancel certain actions into others that you couldn't before. There's no other way to put it. King of Fighters 95 is just a better version of King of Fighters 94. It feels like what happens when you take a rush game and then give those developers 7 more months to work on it. And that compliment especially goes for the game's AI difficulty. Again, if you want to play against your friends, it's good. For 95, it's a pretty solid game. But against the computer, oh my goodness, the difficulty feels way more balanced. It's still hard, I will admit. It's still a game designed to take your quarters. It is still far more difficult than most modern-day fighting game arcade ladders, but doesn't feel just broken. In King of Fighters 94, I tried playing the difficulty on hard, medium, and easy, and it barely changes. Easy difficulty feels almost the same as hard. In King of Fighters 95, yeah, it's still tough, but easy mode is at least easier than normal mode. Normal mode is easier than hard. It feels like someone actually tried to balance this thing. It doesn't feel like a complete mess. And there were several updates that just made sense. I mentioned that when you beat a character in the last game, you would gain some life back before going on to the next match. But when I went back to play that game, I was stunned at how much life you gain. It is a solid chunk no matter what happens. In King of Fighters 95, and for every game after this, the amount of life that you gain back would depend on how much time was left on the clock.
Okay, and yeah, that system has persisted up until KOF 15 too. So strategically, during pro matches, you can kind of like, if you know for a fact that you're not going to be able to win this fight, I've seen a lot of people just stall out the time. So once they lose this character, their opponent doesn't get as much life, And it has been the deciding factor in a few matches. It's just another layer of strategy when it comes to the team play.
It was great. It meant that if you knew you needed more life to take on the next enemy, you'd try to finish the match faster so that way you could gain more back. Or if you knew that there was no way for you to beat your current opponent, you could try to stall and run out the clock, so that way, when they eventually did win, they would gain back very little life when they went on to face your next character.
Pre-watched.
This added a huge level of strategy to King of Fighters, and makes me watch the clock in these games just as closely as I watch my life bar. And there were several other important adjustments as well. There isn't a country mile between the strength in your light attack and heavy attack, and when you charge up your meter, you do get a power boost, but it's not so huge that just powering up is your entire strategy. And most importantly, you were no longer confined to pre-made teams. This is probably the biggest change 95 made to the gameplay. You can now mix and match fighters to your heart's content, and it gave the game a massive amount of variety. It's probably the reason why this game has developed such a strong competitive scene around it. You can face 100 opponents, and none of them would use the same combination of characters. And again, I have to stop and point out how good the stages look. There's a few that aren't winners, but most of them...
When I was searching up the different stages on the SNK wiki to use as a background for the thumbnail, opening up the images, they actually have them as GIFs on the website. They are so incredibly detailed. Like, just viewing them as a whole, because we can only see like a little square of it here in the fighting game. But when you see the actual thing, I actually would love to have that just like upscaled and made into a wallpaper. It just looks really cool.
I feel like they have to have those on wallpaper.
Really impressed me. Find in front of the giant Neo Geo store on the Team Japan stage, which would go on to be a staple stage for this series. The Art of Fighting stage, where for the first several seconds you have to duke it out in this cramped elevator as it rides up, only for the stage to then open up once you hit the top floor. Or my personal favorite, the Fatal Fury stage.
That feels like a very Smash stage. So I know the comments are saying that Smash was really heavily inspired from King of Fighters, and that makes so much sense to me. I can see it 100%.
I did not know. I had only heard the stories, I'm pretty sure. Actually, it was probably mentioned in passing during the Fatal Fury retrospective that Sakurai was playing King of Fighters in an arcade machine and beating up the couple, where he was like, maybe I want to make a fighting game that's more accessible to people. For casuals to play. And that's really cool because, you could see a lot of direct comparisons to systems that we have in Smash that were introduced here in King of Fighters.
Jumping off a dock, and the fight is then in this shallow water, and that water looks great for 1995. And of course, I have to mention this guy in the background who is clearly feeling himself more than any man.
Pretty watch! But we're getting some really cool ideas for the stages here. Like, I could see this being in the future when RTX is finally on. Seeing the reflections of the fighters on the water's surface would be incredibly cool.
Yeah.
And like the going up the elevator thing, that is so like action movie style, very anime too. Just like on a floating platform rising into the air as you're fighting. It's not as dramatic as that, but it's the beginning of that idea.
Video game history. That man's funk levels are through the roof. And the sound design in this game is noticeably better. There are some voice lines that do sound too compressed, but the sound effects really stand out. The clanking under your feet when you're jumping on this metal bridge, the crackling fire and lightning on Kim's stage, and of course, the slapstick booty bump sound effect from Yuri that sounds like it came straight out of a Warner Brothers cartoon. Also, one last thing that I have to point out about KOF 95. SNK was famous in the 90s for having the corniest fighting game dialogue ever. Everyone remembers Fatal Fury and the
yeah. The classic. I love it. I'm so glad that they decided to go this route. Either intentionally or unintentionally. It's so iconic.
I'm in the pink today, boy. But that stuff was in all their fighting games, especially KOF. And this was the game where that really started to kick in. And
You move like an elephant in a tutu. Hit the showers. Talk about unique insults, man. I don't know how I'd respond. Okay.
Love it. Stuff like Goro Diamond stopping to mention that he loves bowling for no reason, or so many obvious attempts to try and replicate the corny dialogue of 80s American action films. It's good old classic SNK cheesiness. Nobody did lame insults better than SNK back in the day.
Bummer
now,
City.
As for the cast of characters, because of time and technical limitations, they could only add one new team, Team Rivals. But 24 characters was already pushing it for a Neo Geo system, so if they were going to add one new team, that of course means they had to get rid of one old team. But who to pick? Who to get rid of? No, they're too popular. Team Women Fighters? No, people love that team.
Definitely not the American sports team.
The plot. Who are we going to get rid of? No! Yep, remember how I said SNK proceeded to turn the American sports team into a joke? This is when that began. The official canon of this game is that everyone who was originally in King of Fighters 94 was invited to come back for King of Fighters 95, but then Team Rivals proceeded to beat the crap out of the American sports team and took their invites.
Bruh.
And the American sports team would never make it back into another canonical King of Fighters. They really should not have given up their lucrative sports careers to become Street Fighters. Now, as I said, the new team was called Team Rivals, and as you can imagine from that name, they were primarily designed to serve as the villain team. The cast was made up of Billy Kane, the loyal right-hand man to Geese Howard and constant thorn Terry Bogart's side. Then there was Aiji Kisaragi, a character who first appeared in Art of Fighting 2. He was a ninja whose family had a long-running rivalry with Ryo's Kyoku Genryu school. And lastly, the leader of the team and the only completely brand new character in KOF 95, Iori Yagami.
Introduced as part of the villain team. I see you, Iori. Makes sense from his design. He do be like that.
Was a bloodthirsty, borderline sociopathic villain who would just as gladly turn on his allies than work beside them.
Shirt is so long.
So, like, how does this change? What happened to Iori? Because apparently I've seen comments talking about Iori being a sweetheart who doesn't like fighting, but he kind of has to. Whenever he releases his power, people die. So how does this shift? What happens?
He wasn't always like that. Iori used to be a successful musician, playing bass in a jazz band, and he despised violence. But then his powers activated.
Neo Milk? I see you, Neo Geo.
You see, the Yagami clan possessed a firepower just like the Kusanagis, except their flames were purple. And I'll get into why all that is in more detail later, but the Yagami and the Kusanagis had been in a blood feud for generations. And once his powers activated, Iori had one goal: to kill Kyo and anyone that got between them. Now, when SNK was doing location tests for this game, the players they surveyed were all behind Iori. He was a smash hit. People loved his aggressive playstyle.
Yeah, how do you not like him? Yeah.
He looks so cool, man. Of course. People love him. SNK really knocked it out of the park with some of these character designs. Of course, there were a few duds here and there. It's a poor American team. But, yeah. Iori,
his Rekka attacks, his iconic laugh.
We'll see more. Yes. You know it's iconic up until today when you still see gifs of this sometimes. Like, it's still referenced in media nowadays.
Oh yeah, 100%.
That's awesome.
This is one of the things that I have seen prior to this one of the only things I knew about this game.
And especially his design. Everyone praised this character for his style. I mean, just listen to this glowing testimony from this young upcoming game developer.
But when I first saw this character in the game at the time, due to his look and attitude, I thought whoever created this character must be a genius.
Best of luck to that guy.
I wonder who that guy is. He must work on an indie game. I'll have to see.
Yeah.
Hope he goes far. Also, not to jump ahead too far, but Iori is another great example of how these characters do change and grow over the course of these games, as his backstory would end up getting fleshed out over the next few games, and would later go from being a villain to more of an anti-hero. Now, even though that was the only new team, just like with the first game, there was a lot that was pitched that ended up getting left out. So you know what that means. It's time again for...
Cut content!
Well, shockingly enough, as popular as he was and as important as he would be to this series moving forward, originally Iori wasn't going to be in the game at all. And the third member of Team Rivals was going to be Roddy Burst, a bounty hunter from Art of Fighting 3. The funny thing about that is, Art of Fighting 3 wouldn't be released until 1996. Meaning, if they had gone through with this,
that would be
Roddy
spoiler.
Burst would have been introduced in a crossover game before the game he was actually meant to debut in. More than likely, this is why they decided to hold off on Roddy and instead create Iori to be a counter to Kyo. And because of that, we ended up getting one of the most legendary rivals in fighting game history, and Roddy was never heard from again.
Oh, poor Roddy. But your sacrifice will not be forgotten. It was it's funny how this happens, right? It's just like, we planned this, but things didn't work out, so we'll have to make something completely new. Become smash hit character, face of your company. Probably the character with the most crossovers into other fighting games from your company. That's insane, man.
Next up, another team that was meant to be introduced in this game was Team Bosses with Geese, Krauser, and Mr. Big. But they were cut, probably because they didn't want to take attention away from the Rivals team as the new villains. Although, speaking of the Geester and his brother, in what is easily the most disturbing bit of cut content we're going to talk about today, or possibly ever, originally the final boss of this game wasn't just going to be Rugal, it was going to be Rugal fused with Geese and Krauser.
Wow.
That is an out there design. How would that work, actually? Of course you love it. You love this kind of thing, this body horror stuff. Of course you do.
They have no blind spots, Zero.
Oh my god, this is true. You can't win punch them. They'll see it coming from a mile away from all directions. Cross up? What cross up? I see you coming. Oh, Jesus.
Create a brand new entity called Rugal Infinity. And maybe I'm just speaking for me here, but I'm really glad they couldn't put that one in the game. Sometimes cut content should remain cut content.
I want
the
it.
concept art alone is going to be stuck in my brain for the rest of my life. I don't really know if I ever wanted to actually fight Cronenberg Rugal. And lastly, and maybe the biggest shocker, originally there was going to be a Team Samurai Showdown. Comprised of Haomaru, Nakaruru, and Galford. But according to that Polygon interview with Oda, they cut the team because only 2 Samurai Showdown games had been made at this point, and they still weren't confident that these characters were going to end up becoming popular. Yeah, not because logically these characters would have to have existed hundreds of years before the events of King of Fighters, but because they didn't know if Samurai Showdown, the series that would become SNK's second biggest fighting game franchise, would be a hit. I feel like I should point out right now that when King of Fighters 94 was made, Art of Fighting also only had 2 games, and that was enough to create this entire crossover. But 1 year later, Samsho having 2 games wasn't enough to get them in the door. However, it is worth pointing out that the next year, when King of Fighters 95 got a Game Boy port, they did add Nakaruru in there as a guest character, which might have come about as a result of this team being cut. Now, as you make your way through the arcade ladder, you'll occasionally get glimpses of Rugal, revealing himself to still be alive, and now he's got a mysterious new partner waiting for you. It turns out that Kyo's father Saishu didn't die in the last game. Instead, Rugal took his unconscious body and brainwashed him to fight against you.
Oh, are you
Originally,
kidding me?
Saishu was meant to have died in King of Fighters 94, but when the game got a sequel, they figured it would be fun to surprise the audience by bringing him back as a mid-boss, as well as a way to flesh out Kyo's character. And this would go on to kind of be the formula for every King of Fighters after this. There would always be the big bad at the end of the game, but before you could get to them, you would always have to face a sub-boss. Once you defeat Saishu, he comes back to his senses for just a moment before Rugal steps in. And over the last year, Rugal has undergone some changes. I'd imagine having an aircraft carrier blow up in your face would do that to a man. He now has a robotic arm, pale skin, and he's somehow figured out a way to go Super Saiyan.
What?
This is Omega Rugal, a version of...
Oh, okay, Omega Rugal. This is the version that got into 15. I've got to say it. All the 2D art looks way better than the 3D.
100%. Yeah, that's not even a comparison.
I don't think this is really up for debate. I think we can all agree on this one.
Rugal, who is overflowing with some strange dark energy, and you have to fight him inside of his secret base where he's arming a missile, implying that if you don't beat him, then he's going to launch it and destroy I really don't know. It's never...
Look, just the threat alone is enough, okay? We don't need specifics here.
We don't need crazy people launching missiles. It doesn't matter where it's going.
That said, this feels very Resident Evil. Like, am I wrong?
Kind of does. You're not wrong.
I feel like Resident Evil was kind of that series that made the fight scene on an elevator that is sort of timed quite prevalent. Pretty popular in media, yeah.
Actually addressed. I don't even know if Rugal owns this base. But damn if it isn't a cool setting for a final fight.
Yeah.
However, as intimidating as he is...
Rugal's just renting.
Who's he renting it from then? We need to know.
I still think original recipe Rugal from KOF 94 was tougher for one simple reason. Omega Rugal isn't flat out broken. Yeah, remember I said the original KOF is notorious for having a busted AI that just reads all of your inputs and does disgusting amounts of damage? So while Omega Rugal has all of old Rugal's moves, some even being faster and having flashier effects, I never lost my mind over this fight. I never started to rage against it, start pulling out my hair, because the original Rugal fight felt like you need a lot of skill and a lot of luck.
I don't know if I've talked about that before or not, but that's how like Kingdom Hearts bosses are, the super bosses. Mm-hmm. In some games, it's like the hardest Kingdom Hearts super boss pre-Remind was probably from Birth by Sleep. And it was the hardest boss fight, not because it was actually hard, but because it was just completely programmed to be just busted. It had like RNG things that could just kill you if it felt like it. So it's like you could start a run, be playing perfect, and then you just die because the game was like, you know what, fuck you in this run. So it's like that's so frustrating when the loss just isn't even your own fault.
Yeah.
And they in 3 with Remind bringing in like Yozura, that boss fight, hardest fight, but it actually is like a mechanical check. Like that one, you have to play frame perfect, but that if you play frame perfect, you will win.
I am okay with like secret final bosses to be really tough, but challenging in a way where it's asking you, do you truly know how to play this game? Have you mastered all the mechanics that we put in front of you in this game over the course of the entire game, right? Mm-hmm.
If a super boss is expecting you to play perfect, that I am okay with. If a super boss is cheating and doing things that can ruin your run outside of your own skill level, that I'm not okay with.
That said, it's funny that it became a literal term that is referenced till today because of Omega Rugal, or Rugal from the first game.
It's really funny. Mm-hmm.
You could really only beat that match if the computer just decided to not counter you at the exact right moment.
Yeah, that's
KOF 95 feels like you need a lot of skill, but just a little bit of luck. It feels like if you actually are good at this game, then you can beat it. And when you do beat it, Rugal calls you a jerk, which always makes me laugh. But then he explodes as his power erupts out of him.
I would have gotten it away with it too if it wasn't for you meddling kids and that dumb dog.
So funny.
And this is when things get interesting. Now, I mentioned way back at the start of this video that the producer of this game, Takashi Nishiyama, won their games to have rich stories behind them. And now that it was clear that King of Fighters was going to be an annual thing, they decided to map out a massive tale for this franchise. And this weird new power that Rugal has, the way it just burst out of him in a flash of a skull, left some of the heroes with questions. And in Team Japan's ending, it's revealed that Kyo's father survived the fight and was now watching his son from a distance. And he warned that something was coming. Something that the Kusanagi family had been facing for generations. It was his destiny, and Kyo would have to face it. Same thing goes for several other endings. Iori's ending shows him promising to kill Kyo and all the Kusanagis. Team Fatal Fury's ending sees Geese talking about his plans to deal with that team, and that would play directly into the next game. Even the custom teams, a team made up of 3 random characters you pick, will still have an ending that hints at things to come. It also ends with the most hilarious wording in the entire series. Rugal defeated King of Fighters 95 in. Using the prize money, each member retired happily. At least until 1996. Until...
I knew it was gonna be good when it started with beef heated, but the cherry on top is at least until 1996. The developers knew. They just knew.
To be continued?
Question mark?
Oh god, I love that. Everything from the defeated to I don't know if this is going to continue to saying that everyone retired for the span of a year. There is so much good 90s arcade translations in such a short amount of time there. But as bad as that wording is, it does imply that SNK had plans already in place for next year. And boy did they ever. Because in this game, we just got a little tiny hint of the story. But in King of Fighters 96, that story would become a defining element of the entire franchise.
Oh boy.
Violent fighting to come again. As the year flew by from the excitement.
I can now understand the narration.
Special team tournament again.
Yeah. True.
In 1996.
Leona! Vice, immature, probably.
King of Fighters 96 came out in July the next year, and while they did have a longer development cycle on this game, it's widely believed the staff was still busting their backs on it around the clock. Because unlike the last game that contained the same graphics and only had one new team, King of Fighters 96 featured multiple brand new characters and saw a decent graphical upgrade. The sprites all looked much better in this game. But that of course means that they had to remake all the sprites. Because of this, the developers were working up until the last minute on it. When they did the location test of this game just a few months before its release, they didn't even have the full roster available because they hadn't made everyone yet. Yeah, it was a race to meet this deadline, but they did it. And somehow, it's the best game yet. As I said, King of Fighters 95 felt much better than 94, and 96 continued that trend. Doing combos feels far more natural. It feels more fun and free to experiment. And I no longer have to carefully reach out and poke the enemy with my big toe and hope they don't instantly kill me back because the difficulty finally feels like a normal fighting game. If you're going back and checking out these games for the first time and you find yourself stuck on 95 thinking, holy crap, when does this thing stop trying to eat all my quarters? KOF 96, that's when. And the game featured several new mobility changes that made your characters more agile, and it makes this game finally feel like the King of Fighters I was used to. You no longer dash forward, now you ran when you double tapped in a direction. Also, when you hit the two light buttons together, you no longer did your lean to the side, instead you rolled, giving you far better options for avoiding attacks and being able to mix up your
mechanics still to this day.
Lastly, and maybe the most important addition to this game, a monumental adjustment that would go on to affect the entire history of this series, something that would revolutionize the fighting game world.
What is it?
Yes, King of Fighters 96 introduced short hops and long jumps to this series. Long jumps being performed by simply pressing down, then up to leap further, but the short hops, which would be performed by giving your stick just a slight tap in a direction, will become one of the biggest defining gameplay elements of this series.
Specifically for KOF, there's 4 different types of jumps. Like when we were playing Guilty Gear, there was the regular jump, your air dashes, and then your super jump. In KOF, you have a hop, a jump, a hyper hop, and then a hyper jump. And all 4 of them are sort of used differently when it comes to playing KOF neutral. And the rock, paper, scissors plays differently from like, high, low, overhead. It becomes like, you do mid, you do a hop in, you do a jump to do a cross up. Yeah, it's played very differently from the games that I'm used to, at least. Which, it's pretty neat. It has its own unique thing going on.
Okay.
Short hops might not look like much, but this allows you to control how quickly you get in on the opponent. It allows you to attack closer to the ground, which lets you link into a ground attack that you wouldn't normally be able to do from a normal jump. I know it's not the most impressive technique on paper, but the versatility of this move would revolutionize this series. Now, when it comes to the presentation, I already said the sprites and the animation look much better, and this was the first game in the series to introduce unique animations between characters before the matches, helping to give them some more personality and showing off their relations. Seeing Iori and Kyo stare each other down before the fight helped to add to their rivalry, and I have to mention Ralph and Clark striking Super Sentai poses, a running gag between the two of them that still comes up to this day. But if I had to point at a spot...
So that's what they were referencing during the trailer where we watched them. I see. Okay, they're just two bros. These two idiots just want to have fun. I can respect it.
Where they might have cut some corners, it would be the backgrounds. I said I always thought that the stages in King of Fighters looked great, but this is the one big exception to that. Don't get me wrong, there's still some good ones, especially the big final stadium that you fight in, complete with a cheering crowd and mascots dressed like KOF characters. Okay. That's such a charming touch. But this is one of the only games in the series where multiple teams have to share the same stages, and a lot of the background characters look... oof. That
He's not vibing like the other guy.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, there was a lot more movement, a lot more detail in the backgrounds in the previous games. It's pretty noticeable here.
A lot of these feel emptier, yeah.
Yeah.
Is a man out of an MS-DOS choose-your-own-adventure game right there. But to give this game's presentation another compliment, the soundtrack is excellent. Some people have even said that this might be the best soundtrack in the entire series, and I think I might have to agree with them. The rising motivated beats of Kim's themes, the heavy electric rock of Team Ikari's theme, and of course, Iori's legendary saxophone number. There's so many jams in here. The only games in this series that I think might have better soundtracks are the ones that just did covers of all the songs in this game. And as for the cast, this was the first game to really mix things up. Team Fatal Fury, Psycho Soldiers, Korean Justice, and the Hero Team all stayed the same. Although it is worth pointing out that Kyo saw some changes, losing his projectile attack and having it replaced with a 3-hit Rekka. In fact, he wasn't the only one to lose a projectile. This game is referred to by many King of Fighters fans as the game that hates projectiles, because many of the characters either completely lost projectiles or had them transformed into big blast effects with very short range. But when it comes to the rest of the teams, they were all shifted around. The Art of Fighting team lost Takuma and gained Yuri, which was actually set up in their ending in the last game. But now that Yuri was on the Art of Fighting team, Team Women Fighters needed a new member. So they add Kasumi Todo from Art of Fighting 3.
Oh.
She was the daughter of Ryu Hakutodo, a character from the very first Art of Fighting who was a master of a rival dojo to the Kyokugen school. And when her father went missing, she went looking for Ryo, believing that he might have something to do with it.
Okay.
She's a fairly studious young girl trying to do her dad's dojo proud, and she's also constantly practicing her English, which is why her win animation sees her pulling out a pocket dictionary and attempting to badmouth the opponent.
Winners, touch me! Come back when you grab!
Okay, you know what?
Perfect.
I was gonna say, you know, she looks kind of basic, what you'd expect, you know. But yeah, that completely makes her so much better in my eyes. She's just trying her best to insult you in English.
In fact, a fun little Easter egg: if you play as Kasumi in the bar stage, you can see her dad in the background cheering her on. And that's not the only Easter egg on this game. These arcade machines were capable of keeping track of the date. So if you fought on this stage on Halloween, there would be a jack-o'-lantern in the background. It's not much, but it's actually the very first date-activated Easter egg in a fighting game. And I think it might be one of the earliest date-activated Easter eggs in a game, period. It's certainly the earliest one that I've been able to find. Next big
Really? That's cool.
It is cool, yeah.
The first one I ever ran into was actually during the Arkham games, where if you go and meet Calendar Man, specifically, he has something to say on the day that you're currently playing the game. And he has like these different rhymes or whatever he says. So like he has stuff for different holidays and stuff for like the nearest holiday that is incoming.
That's cool.
But yeah, this is pretty neat, especially way back when. Like an introduction to a particular type of Easter egg. Like Easter eggs were there ever since the beginning of games. Developers want to put in cool stuff, obviously. But yeah, this is neat.
Hydern left Team Ikari, and taking his spot was his daughter Leona. Hydern found Leona on a mission years ago, the only survivor of a village where everyone had been mysteriously killed. He took her in, raised her, and trained her in all of his fighting styles, so she shares a lot of moves in common with him, but she also has a few of her own, including a big spiral ball that if it catches your opponent, just decimates their life points while you can still run around and continue doing damage to them. Leona is another big fan favorite character, and she's also one of the more important characters to this franchise's story for reasons that will become clear in a moment.
Okay.
And lastly, after the ending of King of Fighters
the Orochi
95,
blood and
let's
whatnot.
just say that Billy and Naiji did not want to work with Iori again. So
Damn.
he needed to find some new partners for this tournament. So one day, 2 new mysterious fighters.
Oh, Vice and Mature team up with Iori? Oh god, no wonder why they have history with each other. I'm fairly certain Iori's the one who kills them too. Oh boy.
Appeared before him, Mature and Vice, who said that they could help him with his goals. Now, I say they're new because they've never been playable before, but they have actually been in the previous games.
The secretaries?
You see, Mature and Vice were Rugal's assistants in the cutscenes in 94 and 95. The two.
Oh damn, we probably saw it. I didn't even notice because I thought it was just the generic lady. Yeah.
I saw the blonde one, and I thought she looked familiar for a second, but I didn't piece it together.
Damn.
2 of them are malicious, they're deadly, and they enjoy bloodshed enough to risk teaming up with a guy who almost killed his previous teammates.
I like how it's Mature and Iori in the background. Both of them are turned away, kind of just looking back.
Why would they want to fight side by side with Iori in the first place?
Why?
Well, that's because they were secretly already working for a brand new boss. A new villain who was pulling everyone's strings and needed to make sure that Iori was at this tournament. But before we get to that, we should mention the one completely brand new team. The final team that you face in the arcade ladder, and one of the teams that got cut from the last game. Team Bosses, made up of 3 final bosses from other SNK games. Geese Howard, the man who killed Terry's father and crime lord of Southtown. Geese's brother Krauser, who is the head of his own Assassin's Guild. And Mr. Big, Geese's former underling and now a competing gang leader. I've already talked a little bit about each of these characters in this video, but I will say their stage is easily one of the best in this entire game. And
of course,
I love that
the
each
villains.
of these characters get their own theme song from their respective games playing behind them. Just another example of how good this soundtrack is. Now, after beating Team Big Bad Bosses, you make your way to the championship stage, where you meet the new mysterious figure hosting this year's King of Fighters, Chizuru Kagura. She says she put this tournament on because she wanted to meet the person who defeated Rugal. She reveals that Rugal died not because of the battle, but because he had absorbed a fraction of the power of Orochi and he couldn't control it and destroyed him. Now, you probably have several questions right now. Number 1 of which being, what's an Orochi? Okay.
No, actually, I think I know what an Orochi is.
Well, we've seen our fair share of anime. We have a pretty good guess.
Part of the show I'm sure many of you have been waiting for. You see, I've been talking this whole time about how SNK wanted this series to have a big story behind it, and this is the moment that comes into play. And the crazy thing is, just like with Fatal Fury before, a massive chunk of this story and the information that you need to know in order to understand what the heck is going on isn't even in the game. No, instead, it was in promotional material released by SNK before the game's release. Heck, before you fight the final boss of the game, Kyo references that the 2 of them already fought. Which happened where? Not in this game, that's for sure.
The manga?
So I will now attempt to give you the concise, succinct summary of what the heck King of Fighters is about. Almost 2,000 years ago, Gaia, the will of the earth itself, decided, hey, you know what? These humans, don't like them. They're building stuff on me and cutting down my trees. Don't care for that. So the deity Orochi was born to wipe mankind out. But some humans were actually on Orochi's side, going so far as to form a clan to worship Orochi. This clan was known as the Hekeshu, and they began waging war on all humans who weren't down with the whole worshipping a genocidal snake god thing. So 3 human clans came together, the Kusanagi, the Yasakani, and the Yatta, and they used 3 mystic treasures to seal Orochi away. The Kusanagi had a sword, the Yatta had a mirror, and the Yasakani had a Magatama. These treasures were passed down through their families so they could always be prepared to lock Orochi away if he ever returned. Well, unfortunately for these clans, the Hekeshu were still around, and they spent the next 1,000 years plotting revenge, and they finally figured out a way to destroy the alliance of the 3 sacred treasure families. They murdered the wife of the leader of the Yasakani clan and framed the Kusanagis for it. And so, the Yasakani leader—
and that's why they hate each other. I see. And I believe when we were reading the interview for Vice and Mature, they used to be former Hekeshu, which is probably their silhouettes there.
Leader went to the dormant Orochi and asked it for its power in order to get revenge. Now, the Kusanagis and the Yasukanis both had the ability to create flames, but after the Yasukani leader absorbed the power of Orochi, his flames turned purple. His hatred for the Kusanagi clan then became tied to his powers, so this hatred would forever be passed down throughout his family. And he even abandoned his ties to the Sacred Treasure clans completely by dropping the name Yasukani and taking on the name Yagami. Cut to the modern day, when a man named Ganon, who was one of the 4 legendary king, a title given to the highest-ranking officials of the Hekeshu, finds Rugal and defeats him, even removing his eye, but says that he finds him to be intriguing, so he...
removes his eye. Is that Gonitz, I think? Are we finally interested in seeing the guy? Yeah, those are the straps on his outfit, right? He has like the little belts and whatnot.
Grants Rugal a taste of Orochi's power, and he entrusts 2 other members of the Hekeshu, Mature and Vice, to watch over him. Rugal couldn't contain the power and it eventually destroyed him. Ganitz proceeds to kill the head of the Yada clan, Chizuru's father, which weakened the seal around Orochi. Now, all he needed to do was kill the remaining members of the Sacred Treasure families. So, after ambushing Kyo and beating him with ease, he left him for dead, but Kyo was able to pull through and barely survive. Chizuru realizes that the Hekeshu are making their move, so she needs to get the Kusanagi and the Yagami family to come together. And the only way she can get the 2 of them together in the same place is with the King of Fighters tournament.
To beat the shit out of you.
The new tournament, but Ganitz, now finding out that Kyo survived, realizes that he still has to kill all 3 of them, and he says, wait, King of Fighters? The place where all 3 of them are going to be at the exact same time? Well, isn't that convenient?
Time to
drop
a bomb.
So he calls up Mature and Vice and says, hey, you 2 are all at work now that Rugal is dead, right? Go find Iori and tell him that you'll enter the tournament with him so that way he can kill Kyo. As long as he gets to do that, he's not going to question anything else. So now you got Kyo's team, and you got Iori's team, all arriving at the championship together, only to find Chizuru there. After challenging them to test their power, she reveals to them the true purpose behind this tournament, which was to bring them all together in the same place, only for Ganitz to pop up and say, hey, thanks for getting everybody together in the same place. So now you know the complete story of the Orochi saga, all leading up to this battle. Gotcha. One of the great things about this fight is that it's not just about Kyo and Iori. There are multiple other characters who get some major reveals going into this battle. For example, if you're playing as the Ikari warriors, then Ganitz will reveal that Leona was actually a member of the Hekeshu, and she was the one that killed her own family when she was overwhelmed by the power of the Orochi blood. And this is a great example of one of my favorite things about the cast of King of Fighters. Everyone has their own stories, but those stories so often will cross over with each other, leading multiple characters to have connection with each other that you might have never suspected. From there, you had to fight Ganitz in the destroyed remains of the stadium, and remember how I said that many of the stages in this game took a hit in quality? Not this one, because this set is incredible.
Bro still has the same moves. I think there's even the same stage in KOF 15, or at least a complete version of the stadium. That's really cool. And yeah, the whole writing of every single team, no matter what team that you're playing, has something important that gets revealed about them. It's nice. It definitely feels like,
cool, yeah.
At the very least, you don't have to be playing the main characters to get all the juicy stuff. You get stuff for your favorite characters.
This is one of our complaints with Guilty Gear, right? It's like, it's disappointing that like Giovanna has like kind of no impact in Strive, or like Bridget from some of the earlier ones. It's like she's just there. She's vibing, you know.
On one hand,
like they're doing stuff technically, but like
I can understand that there's a lot of characters and a lot of history, and it's hard to keep track of that all. But I mean, King of Fighters is capable of doing it, so we'll have to see in later games.
Not like a detriment to Guilty Gear necessarily, but it is cool that King of Fighters does this. That's, I guess, more of my point.
Yeah, more of a bonus towards King of Fighters.
You can look at it all and clearly see that this was the big Coliseum stage that you were fighting in just a moment ago, but now in shambles. The entire arena is surrounded by a raging hurricane, letting you know how powerful Ganitz is. And my favorite little detail is just all the little props and characters flying around in the background. Like one of the costume mascots from the previous stage is now flying past and attempting to grab onto the pillars and hold on to you.
Oh my god! I love how the guys are just standing there with their hands behind their back, like, "Yup,
okay." Help them at all, yeah.
Oh, also, we didn't really like how's he pronouncing his name? Ganitz? I'm pretty sure it's Goddess, but you never know. How do you like his design here? Because in 15, it
looks a lot better here.
Yeah.
I think this is what I think I mentioned it a little bit in that video, but when you have something that's in pixel art here, this outfit is really, really simple. Like, it is basically a blank cloth with no patterning, no detailing, no anything. But because it's pixel art, because like all those pixels kind of add detail, even if there's no detail there, it works really well. But when you move that into 3D, it just becomes a really blank, empty-looking robe. Because there's no detail there anymore.
All the detail is lost.
Like, his little capelet thingy, which is cute, and all of this works really well in pixel art, but it does not translate to 3D, even remotely.
Yeah, that one, I don't agree with all your opinions, but I could certainly agree with this one. They just look better in 2D.
Life. There is so much going on this stage. It's fantastic. Not that you'll be able to notice any of it, because your attention is going to be laser focused on the big demon priest in front of you. Yeah, remember how I said Rugal in 95 was easier than Rugal in 94? That trend did not last. Ganet is arguably one of the toughest bosses in the entire King of Fighters series. I mentioned that with the two Rugals, a good strategy was just to maintain your distance and deliver pokes whenever you could. But there ain't no footsies here. He keeps you zoned out by summoning twisters across the stage. But if you get close to him, then he has a wide variety of slashes with solid range to keep you from attacking. And worst of all is his grab that does massive damage. And thanks to his speed and the fact that he can teleport, even if you try to stay outside of his range is wherever he wants it to be. Ganet is SNK boss syndrome at its finest. Now, if you defeat Ganet, then the game goes out with a really morbid note, as he uses his own wind powers to rip his body apart rather than face defeat. And then each team proceeds to have their own individual endings. And you
that dweeb
rather than face defeat. And then each team proceeds to have their own individual ending.
Don't know. Did he off himself?
And you would assume that since Kyo's our hero, his team's ending would be the canonical one. And you'd be partially right, because actually little bits and pieces of several endings are important to the story. Especially Iori, because in his ending, after he learns about his family's connection to the Orochi, he's overwhelmed by what is known as the Orochi Blood Riot, a mindless violent frenzy that members of the Hekesho occasionally go into, and while in this rage state, he murders Mature and Vice. But the ending that's really important for this story...
Oh, the interview makes so much sense now. I see. And they were talking about how like the entire arena was trash afterwards. They didn't know what happened there. Yeah, because, okay. Oh, man, it's all coming together.
Isn't one with an established team. Yes, King of Fighters 96 was the first game to introduce something that later games would refer to as special edit teams. A unique combination of characters that would unlock something special if you beat the game with them. In later games, all you'd unlock would just be some artwork, but in this game, if you input a certain command on the select screen, you could unlock Chizuru to play as. Then, if you made a team of Chizuru, Iori, and Kyo, then you would get a special ending where the three of them come together to defeat Ganet. Chizuru then asks the two of them to work together, but they both refuse and go off in their separate directions, leaving Chizuru to just stand there and say, "All right, my family has sworn never to interfere in your feud, but Orochi is coming, and we're going to have to face him whether you're ready or not." And that confrontation would come sooner than she thought in...
the next game. That being said, do you want to push through this one? You still got time?
I should probably stop because I have made too many commitments for today.
No! 2 years before we finish this. 2 years! No! But anyways, guys, yeah, that was so cool to see all the dots that we had learned from the interviews that we had read starting to connect now.
100%.
Yeah, and the unique relationship that Iori, Kyo, and Chizuru share with each other makes sense why Chizuru is kind of like bonking them on the head, telling them to work together. Like, God damn it, guys.
Yeah. Get your shit together. Come on, we got more important things.
Yep. Seeing it, the Orochi stuff and how this is all going to play into. I wonder when Verse is going to get introduced, because that was mentioned a lot in the interviews for 15.
Yeah.
That's probably a much later saga that we'll get into. But yeah, that's going to do it for today's video. So thank you guys so much for joining us. Hope you guys enjoyed your time. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and hopefully next week the next part 3.
Yes.
See you then, dudes. Later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.